This is Lisa Miller and Associates, Florida Insurance Roundup, your podcast on the people, issues, and regulations shaping Florida's insurance market. Now, here's Lisa Miller.
Welcome, friends. In the wake of this terrible destruction left behind by Hurricanes Helene and Milton, many are questioning, how can we better prepare our homes to be higher and stronger, to withstand the next storm that we know is going to come to Florida? We're going to focus today on a key part of that solution, and that is using innovative building products to fortify our homes against Mother Nature. We have three very special guests. Joining us today is Fred Malik. He's the managing director of the Fortified program, which is part of the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety right in the Tampa Bay area, IBHS. The IBHS has been at the forefront of research and development in building science, finding ways to make homes stronger and more resilient to natural disasters like hurricanes. Welcome, Fred. Thank you for joining the show today.
Good morning, Lisa. Thank you for having us. I'm looking forward to talking about resilience.
Absolutely. Also joining us today is Marshall Gabati. He's the managing director at Pearl Homes Developments. One of his developments is Hunters Point in Cortez, Florida, just south of Tampa. And it made the news recently during Hurricane Milton in a headline titled Miracle Neighborhood that survived Hurricane Helene without a scratch. It was in the Daily Mail. So, Marshall, we want to hear more about that, and thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Lisa.
And last, but certainly not least, is Scott Lidberg. He's the CEO of NextGen Building Products. NextGen makes a magnesium oxide-based building product. These construction panels are used in subflooring, in the walls and roof panels, to name a few, that have a very distinctive quality you'll hear more about. Scott, very fascinated by what you're doing and look forward to hearing more from you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you for inviting me to join this conversation.
All right, gentlemen, let's take off for a very resiliency-oriented chat. Fred, as Hurricane Helene and Hurricane Milton have shown us, the power of these storms is devastating, and it's going to stay that way or get worse. But the IBHS that I've seen for the past 20 years has been instrumental in developing solutions to reduce the destruction. I've seen what you've done in South Carolina, where you burn down houses, you blow winded houses, you're doing amazing things. So talk about some of your cutting edge techniques and materials that you're recommending, that you're studying. Tell us what's going on in the Fortified program at IBHS.
Sure. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that. And we are a nonprofit research organization where we are funded by property insurers and reinsurers, and they have tasked us with figuring out how we can reduce or eliminate the financial loss and the disruption that follows natural disasters like hurricanes. We also do work on severe convective storms, hail, and wildfire, as you mentioned. We have a world-class research center located in South Carolina where we have 105 fans. They are 350 horsepower apiece. We have a test chamber where we can literally build 9 single-family homes and subject them to Category 3 winds, 8 inches of rain an hour, realistic hail, and we can burn things. And that gives us an unparalleled ability to really see how homes and commercial structures function as a complete system. And once we are able to do that, then we can start to understand, okay, how is that system weak? Where is it vulnerable? What can we do to strengthen those key areas of vulnerability? And we couple that with the field research that we do. So we are on the ground post-cat looking at hurricanes, tornadoes, and the like. The recent hurricanes were particularly striking for me as a Florida resident. I live in Vero Beach, not far from where we had a devastating series of tornadoes down in Fort Pierce, and then right across from my home on the Barrier Island. So tornadoes are a sad byproduct of hurricanes frequently. So we look at all of those kinds of things. And what has our research shown? Well, our research has shown that there is a predictable progression of damage, and typically damage from high winds will start with the roof. And so many years ago, we made the decision that we would like to come up with a set of guidance for home builders and manufacturers and public policy makers to understand how, and homeowners importantly, how they can make changes to the buildings that are being built so that we can manage those common damage modes. And we came up with the Fortified program. Fortified is oriented around that progression of damage. And Fortified has 3 levels of designation: roof, silver, and gold, similar to what you might see in the sustainability space. And we focus primarily on the roof because now that allows us to not just strengthen new homes that are being built, but also the millions of existing homes that are out there, because you can dramatically change a home's risk profile simply by addressing the vulnerabilities that you can find in the roof. So that's a little bit about what we do. I don't want to hog all the time, but we can talk a little bit more about other things. But one last thing I do want to mention is that IBHS is material agnostic. So we tend to look at what are the common building practices, what are common building materials, can they be used effectively to reduce risk, and if so, how? And we also look at innovative stuff, and we really like to see manufacturers innovating and builders utilizing their intentional goals to reduce risk so that their customers live in stronger, safer, more durable homes.
Very innovative indeed, and before its time, Fred. I mean, when it wasn't cool to be talking about mitigation, IBHS was doing it. So hats off to you and your forward thinking, and have property owners understand the importance of building stronger, and of course with flood, building higher. Marshall, I guess you are a fan of IBHS. I know you're just meeting Fred, but learning about what they're doing and encouraging innovations like what you're doing. Tell us about Hunters Point and what else you're doing in Florida with some of these fortified techniques.
Well, that's interesting. First of all, I'm impressed with Fred's program, and we're very big into third-party inspections. Like all of our homes are USGBC lead inspections, and so far they're all coming out platinum. But this, what Fred's doing is very interesting because so much of what we've been focused on has been resiliency, although we're getting all of our attention up until these last few hurricanes about sustainability. Because in our homes, which we built our model home in a warehouse, we called it a research and design center. We built it inside the warehouse. It took and we operated it for 18 months to understand how we can create this introduction of a battery inside your home, solar panels on the roof, and the power that's generated is stored on your battery. And then at sunset, the battery kicks in and the battery operates your home all night. And it's a daily use battery. And that came in amazingly well during the hurricane when we lost power it's happened during all the last 4 hurricanes. The homes have stayed resilient, and they also stayed sustainable.
How many homes are in Hunters Point?
There's 86 single-family homes. 31 are up and constructed and went through the last 2 hurricanes. And we are starting our phase 2, which will be the balance of the homes in February of 25. I also have a workforce housing project in the city of Bradenton. We took a very bad area, and we built this beautiful 200-unit Class A workforce housing called the Met, and we're over 95% occupied in 3 months, and it's doing very well in a tough multifamily market. So we're planning to move ahead with another Met across the street to get more workforce housing. So we really believe in bringing the sustainability and resiliency to not just people that can afford $1 million, but people that can rent. And our next project that we're working on right now, just a little bit delayed because the county's behind, our final site plan approval for our community called Our Lives, which is 720 rental units in Ellenton, which is probably about 10 miles from our site, just off Highway 75. And we believe that, as an opportunity for people moving to Florida, there's a barrier to entry with the cost of homes. And so if someone can rent at below market or at market rates for an apartment building, they can rent a single family home that's small, but still more than adequate and sustainable and resilient. We think we've got something very interesting. So those are our projects in our pipeline at the moment.
I'm sure with the programs maybe coming out from the Florida Senate, a lot of these communities are incentivized to work with you on some of these workforce housing projects.
You know what? We've been very fortunate with the city of Bradenton. So we do work with the county of Manatee County, but the workforce housing projects are the city of Bradenton, and they've been majorly supportive, and they helped us with an incentive when because we started this before COVID, and then of course when the prices went up, they were there to support us. And now they've actually introduced a program that defines what incentives you get as you project to build the building and what your costs are. So it's very creative that what the city's done. It's bringing developers to the city that would normally not have come, because you can define any incentive ahead of time. And I find that to be very advantageous.
Well, it's a true public-private partnership. So hats off to Manatee County and Bradenton. That's great to hear. And with that you're constructing these resilient workforce homes. Scott, I'd love you to kind of share your thoughts about where your product could be in some of these homes, because you've often heard me say, Scott, and I've said publicly, that I drive over 40,000 miles a year in a car on the roads in Florida, and every crack in the pavement that I see, production homes are plywood and 2x4s. And I affectionately say that these production homes are built with sticks, and 150 mile an hour winds, I don't see how they withstand. But Scott, you talk about how your product might be substituted for those products. I'll let Marshall comment on the products that he's using, and we can talk about, from a innovative building product standpoint, even some of the ones that IBHS has tested. Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. So we manufacture a product that is used in place of an OSB or a plywood or a gypsum product. It's a sheet form, but it's a fiber reinforced cement made out of a mineral called magnesia. And magnesia has actually been used for quite some time with building materials. It's been used in the Great Wall of China. It's been used in the Colosseum in Rome. It's even used in the mortar for the cement used to build the Brooklyn Bridge. It's a fairly new material to North America. It is used all over the world. And the attributes of the product pretty amazing. First of all, it's highly impact resistant. So if you can imagine using a cement-based material versus a wood-based material for a wall, roof, or floor, you can see some of the advantages there. In fact, we shoot 2x4s added out of a cannon, and they basically bounce off. So if you're looking for impact resistance in a storm, whether it's a hurricane or a tornado, we all know that there's a lot of windborne debris that impacts homes, which causes other issues. It's also a non-combustible building material, so there's virtually no organic material in the product. There's nothing for it to burn. We're actually certified by the Wildland Urban Interface Zone, so not completely non-combustible. And the fact that it has no organic matter in it makes it highly resistant to moisture. So in the case of slow rising floodwaters, it's resilient. The water does not change the dimensional structure of the product. It doesn't affect its ability to hold fasteners or stay in place. And again, because it's non-organic, we're not going to have issues with pests, insects eating it, or issues with mold and mildew. So we've designed products for virtually every flat surface of a building, floors, walls, roofs, ceilings. And we just think it's a building material for the future. Highly sustainable, mineral-based, great product, Lisa.
Scott, if I could list the components that I think that we're using We can talk about sticks later. I have an argument on that point, but if to Lisa's point, not to yours, but if I could list like the items that we use, and if you could tell me, what product you have that would replace that or improve it, that would be great for us to understand. And because the brands that we talk about, like I think of ourselves as Mr. Potato Head, where we bring the best components together. And if you have better than what we're using, we of course would be very interested.
Love to share that information.
Great. So I could just tell you. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, Marshall, I want you to continue that engagement, because here's my goal: is that as a result of this podcast, you have taken out of my vocabulary the argument about sticks and plywood. So go right ahead.
Okay, so Scott, this is really meant for you, and part of this, it's mostly meant for you, but I want to get Lisa on side with why we think stick, because of its sustainable components in Florida, are important for us. So what we do a combination of it. So we do a monolithic slab, which is okay, and then we have our first floor, which is the garage. We have that in blocks that are filled with concrete, so that it's a solid concrete wall. And then we go from there with Hurricane, with Simpson strapping and tie downs. We use zip panels that are taped 5/8 of an inch thick, and then on the inside, of course, then there's the framing. And the framing, we use 2x6s instead of 2x4s, and we fill the cavities throughout the home, not just the roof, but the walls and the ceilings. We fill the cavities with 6-inch closed foam insulation. So what that does is as well add strength to the 2x6, and it gives resilience to the walls, not only from an insulation point of view, but a strength point of view. And then on the back of that, of course, we have the zip panels. And then on top of the zip panels, we put hardy board, cement hardy board. So those are the layers that we use. And for our issue, of course, we're very concerned about leaking, and water is our enemy, and we have a lot of water in Florida. So we use a Duradeck product for the lanais. It's very expensive, but with the seams, we really can't use it as a final product. So we have to put a deck on top of it, but it is doing a good job keeping the water out.
So in the construction that you just laid out there, we would be on your first floor where you've got block. A lot of people will finish those walls with a sheetrock to give it that finished look. You would use our product in place of that. If our product gets wet, it's not going to, it'll be something you simply wash off. You're not going to have to cut it off the wall and replace it if there is a case of flooding. The exterior sheathing would be our non-combustible sheathing versus a combustible wood-based product. Highly impact resistant. You can fasten the hardy board directly to that product, so you don't need to change that at all. We've actually done some testing with hardy in a lab down in Bryant, Texas for fire. It's a test that runs 10 minutes for combustibility. We actually shut the test off at a little over an hour because nothing was really happening. So if you're looking for fire resistance, kind of a hardened exterior shell, the hardy plank siding or hardy siding over our product would be great. The structure you're describing on the interior walls with the closed cell foam is a lot like a SIP panel. And we do a lot of work with SIP manufacturers, which is basically our MGO product laminated to the foam and installed as walls. So it's a similar type solution. But again, we're going to have a non-organic, non-paper-based product that you would put on the interior walls to give it that finished look. You'll have the strength, the resiliency, the moisture resistance, and then the lack of organic materials in the product. So no mold, no mildew, no insects.
Sounds great from an interior of that space, because we have flood vents all over the first floor of the garage. And even with the last surge, no water came to the homes. The closest it came to was the end of the driveway. But we were prepared for water to enter the first floor because we have the flood vents. And I wanted to ask, so compared to regular drywall, or even if we do, how much of a difference in costs per square foot? Obviously, drywall is not expensive, but how much more is your product?
It's always going to be a bit of a premium, but if you look at it on an individual home basis, the incremental difference is measured in hundreds, not thousands of dollars. And so we believe it's a worthwhile investment.
Okay, because that'd be interesting because we do, like if we plan for that first floor to be flooded, that's the goal. Unfortunately, when it does flood and it hits the drywall, it's going to have to be repaired after. So it's like, and I really believe in spending more now than having to spend more later, which is part of our vision is that we do more now so that the homes survive and there's less work for the homeowners to do after. So that falls right in line with what we think.
Unless for the insurance companies to pay.
Well, yeah, we're very happy. I can actually say of our 31 homes, I don't believe we have one insurance claim so far at all. Like not one from Helene and from our buddy Milton.
We should track that. And Fred, you were going to say something?
Yeah, just a couple things. I mean, I really like this conversation. I like the way that a manufacturer of a good product is connecting with a builder who's really thinking about long-term solutions. And a couple of things. One of the things that put IBHS on the map was Hurricane Ike and hitting a series of homes that we worked with a builder on Boulevard Peninsula, which Hurricane Ike was a Category 3, came in with 20 foot of storm surge, and they were built to our Fortified standard, and they were the only homes that survived on the peninsula. They were wood frame with concrete pilings, but they one of the interesting things was that particular developer also used a different product. Did not have any sheetrock in the house at all, and it did make a big difference in those homeowners' ability to recover. So, a product that does not have susceptibility to moisture. And the longer term consequences that come along with that. In the insurance world, that's called a damage amplifier. When you get water inside a building, the value of the claim, the value of the loss, the disruption for the occupant, all of those things go up. It's a bad day when water gets in. So if you can have moisture resistant products interior, that's good stuff. The other thing that I heard there was Marshall saying that looking down the road and trying to make really good decisions so that homeowners can reap the benefits on that really bad day, right? And this is a perfect example of how we can have a win-win. If insurance companies are paying out less in claims, that means that the homeowners are having less disruption and less financial loss as a result. So everybody wins. And I think that Marshall is demonstrating a mentality about how can we, as a builder, build with the approach that this house might be here for 100, 200 years? That's something that in the United States, we've had a fairly consumable approach to building where we don't seem to mind that we'll tear things down after 50 years and rebuild and replace. If you look at other parts of the world, the motivation is to have something that lasts centuries. And so these are the kinds of good decisions that can make long-lasting change for the folks that are out there buying homes and who don't, frankly, want to be experts in building. They just want a building to stay over their head, and they want to be able to raise their families and experience life without being forced out due to severe weather. So this is a very interesting conversation, and one of the ways that we might see a connection beyond this podcast is Marshall described how his wall systems are put together, and in the products that he uses, many of them are products that we have looked at IBHS and are successfully used every day in the Fortified homes that we work on. We have over 70,000 homes across the United States now, 31 different states. But Marshall's making some really interesting decisions there. And the inspection process, the third-party inspection process, sometimes for guys like me that are building professionals and some of us that do build or have a background in production building, having somebody look over our shoulders is not necessarily our most comfortable position to be in. But it is a fact that you get what you inspect, not what you expect. And the more that you're paying attention to those critical details, like participating in a program like Fortified, where you get a certificate at the end and that somebody has paid attention to those critical details, that's really a way for consumers to be able to distinguish two houses that may look very similar to one another from the street, but have dramatically different outcomes when it comes to severe weather.
I love that a lot. I mean, that's one certification that is something that I talked to our raters this morning about, Fred. And our rater is authorized as one of your raters. And I asked our rater if, since we've just finished, the LEED and the net zero certifications submission to the USGBC, is because the homes are new, is there any way to retroactively certify these homes by looking at the images of all the insulation, everything that we've done, so that we could consider the Fortified to be another opportunity for us?
So I think there's definitely a conversation to be had there. The more documentation that you have, we collect hundreds of points of data about resiliency, like you experience on the sustainability side. But let's talk a little bit about what kinds of pictures you have and the kinds of products that you're using. And there might very well be a pathway to finding a way to have those homes that are already finished designated.
Great. Because it's the same home over and over again. It's just, and so that you'll be able to see the process. I asked him, he said, of course, the new homes that we have another 55 to go. So he said, those ones are easy. And he wanted to do it. His name is Jeremy Gary, and he's excellent. And so I think it's something we'd like it. We like it. We like a lot. We like everything about it. So I think it's something we're going to move forward with.
Excellent. I look forward to talking.
This is a very successful discussion. I do want to hear more from you, Marshall. I have a pretty prominent media presence in trying to raise the profile of resiliency, the fact that these storms are going to continue to get worse, the fact that the trees snapped at the top in Hurricane Andrew, but they're completely gone from the root in this latest storm, particularly here in North Carolina. So talk to us about traditional building products that you believe can withstand, like typical plot that I'm closing my eyes and I'm driving through Claremont, figuratively. I'm driving through St. Pete, figuratively, and I see these production homes with 2x4s and plywood. Can they withstand 150 mile an hour winds?
First of all, I think that any building is really certified for Category 4 because it's 145 mile an hour winds. That's the fastest that they get. We had 102 mile an hour winds coming through with Milton. Because timber, from your perspective, is not as resilient, I think that what you're looking at is when you drive by these places, figuratively, you'll see timber, and then you're going to see Tyvek stapled on the outside. So that's just the worst thing anyone could do, because all they're doing is meeting code. And if you're meeting code, all you're doing is not going to jail because you have a job to do and meet code, but you're doing nothing exceptional to make the home better for you, for the homeowner, and for sustainability itself and for the environment. And so what we've been able to do is the combination of block, poured concrete, monolithic foundation, and pad, and then we go to we've doubled up on the Simpson ties. So they give us their analysis of where the Simpson ties are supposed to go, and we've doubled up on that. And when we take the cavities that are in the 2x6 and we add the foam insulation, it's unbelievable the strength that it gives the house. So I think that traditionally a 2x4 is a challenge, but with the way we've gone through these hurricanes, we've had, I can really say we've had no damage. We had one solar panel that fell off one of the roofs, and our roofs it should not have fallen off because we specifically have a standing seam steel roof. I can't believe I said that well this time. Standing seam steel roof, say that 3 times, that allows for the solar panels to clip onto the standing seams. So of the hundreds of solar panels that we had up there, and we know from an insurance perspective, that's a big question. Insurance, like everybody that's getting insurance now, they're having to get some kind of special certificate and questions about how our solar panels are placed. So that I'm hearing a lot from homeowners. So I think that the way we do our solar panels is also advantageous from an insurance point of view. And I'd love to be able to say that, because of the fact, and because, all of our elevation, the fact that we build our house, like by code, we had to be 11 feet over the flood zone. And we are almost 21 feet over the flood zone. We brought in an extra 4 feet of fill, which is, of course, very expensive. And we built the houses so high that even in that king tide surge that came with Helene, the highest it got to was to the driveway. So we still had a long way to go, because from the ground, when you're walking up into our homes, there's 7 feet, and then there's 16 more feet to get into the first floor. So it's almost an impossibility to flood from the bottom up. And so that's why the insurers are actually having no problem giving our homeowners flood insurance, especially at the prices that they're giving it, because obviously they don't think it's going to flood, or else they wouldn't give a policy.
You talked about the flood vents that you're using. I only know of one. Of course, I have a favorite that probably is the one that you're using. We'll leave that particular name off, but the fact that you're using them, and if we can remember those in the audience, Fred and his team are preaching the gospel. Fortify your structure, commercial, residential. You live in Florida. If your driver's license says Florida, you live in a flood zone. I cannot preach that enough. And Fred and his Fortified team are continually, every day, demonstrating the products that work against flood, against wind, against wildfire, all the things Mother Nature can force to us. Marshall is taking the concept of resiliency to a new level that could be the benchmark for production builders or others that are constructing the structures in Florida that have to withstand the wind. And Scott on this podcast has a product that he's connected with Marshall that can keep the cutout that you see whenever the floodwaters come. So I'm going to ask each of you as we close. Fred, for you, if you were king for a day and you wake up every morning and you walk into IBHS with a zeal to make things stronger and resilient, what else do we need to do? What would you do?
One, I would encourage those that are listening to make sure you are taking action. Complacency is the wrong approach. You can make a difference. Even starting small, you can make a difference by upgrading how your roof is constructed. Then once you've taken care of that vulnerability, because that's the thing that's going to be damaged most frequently, even in non-tropical cyclones, then you can take care of your windows, your doors, your attached structures. Your garage door in particular is a significantly vulnerable structure. And by the way, I know that we have the windborne debris regions here in Florida. I have yet to see Mother Nature stop throwing stuff around when it moves inland. I mean, that's a perfect example we saw with Helene as she moved inland. Lots of inland properties were damaged by both wind and water. But I would say take action, pay attention to the details, learn more, take advantage of the free resources that we have at fortifiedhome.org and at ibhs.org, because we put all of our stuff out there for free for people to look at. There is no reason why you can't start making a change today.
Yeah, that was great.
Amen. And Marshall, for you, and I'll work with you as much as I can. There's so much funding coming from the federal government for workforce housing, innovative ideas. The cities and counties applaud Manatee and the city of Bradenton for what they're doing. And maybe you and I can talk about how we take that model to other counties and get maybe a county commissioner that is particularly interested in that type thing and wants to partner with you and do something in their community. So we'll talk about that. That's a takeaway. But what would you do if you could rule the world tomorrow?
My biggest ask would be to bring a national home builder that could take our technology and the way we build our homes and scale it on a national level. Because of the fact that they have that ability, they're building 10, 15, 20,000 homes a year, to take a small percentage, 5, 10% of the homes, and build them this way. We're looking for some type of license or partnership or something, not focused on the money side of it so much, but its ability to scale this and make this the norm. Because it does cost a little more money. And I know, Scott's product costs a little more money. That's fine. A little more money is okay when you're spending it so that people don't have to spend it in the future. So I actually asked for two things, I guess. But the big one is to have a national or a few regionals to adopt this practice and not worry about the quartz countertops, because we have that too. We've got our houses are beautiful. They've got the highest end components, but not only pretty, but it's also resilient. And I think that's something that we really want to scale, and we're challenged on how to do that.
I love being a mouthpiece, so I'll help you, Marshall. And Scott, bringing us in for a landing. What about you, if you were king for a day?
Well, I happen to agree with Marshall. I think that the national home builders getting on board with this would help drive this. I think that Florida as a community, as a state, has got to be a leader in pushing some of this new technology and building methods. We certainly are ground zero when it comes to the hurricanes and the flooding, but we're not alone. If you're looking at tornadoes, and I know that those were mentioned earlier on, we've got several areas in this country that are susceptible to tornadoes and thunderstorms and wildfires. And pick an area of the country that doesn't have their own unique issues with Mother Nature. And if we just start adopting these practices as a whole and get away from the disposable home type concept, I think we'll all be much better.
Great way to close. Get rid of disposable homes. And with that, I want to thank all three guests. Fred Malik, who is leading the charge with the IBHS Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, the Fortified program, both commercial and personal residential structures. Thank you for educating us, Fred.
Thank you, Lisa. Appreciate the time, and it was a pleasure meeting you, Scott, and Marshall. Look forward to continuing the conversation.
Great synergy. Thank you, Fred. And Marshall, you're out there swinging hammers, and you're making sure that you walk the talk. And kudos to you for making homes tougher and resilient. And it's just a great pleasure. So thank you for joining us.
I enjoyed it very much. And thanks to Scott and Fred and you. That was enjoyable.
Scott, we thank you for, I think you just recently married, so taking time away from your new wife and spending time with us was very special, and learning all about what your product can do. Thank you for being with us today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed the conversation with everyone.
And this won't be the last one. Many of you will hear me in the media talking about innovative products and homes being stronger, and I love what Fred talked about, that even if you don't live in a windborne debris region, you need to think about wind. If you live in one of those regions, you already know about wind, but wind is everywhere, just like floods are everywhere. And we talked a lot about how do we get communities to recognize that they should require the builders that are in their community swinging hammers to follow Marshall's model and how he's doing things, partnering with cities and counties. And of course, Scott actually creating products that can withstand Mother Nature. So I want to hear from you. It's very important to us that we talk to our listeners and get their feedback. We have tremendous feedback when we release these we try to do one a month if we can, and certainly can do more if you've got great topics that you want to hear about. And you can leave us a message on air, if you will, calling 850-388-8002. That's 850-388-8002. Or send me an email, Lisa Miller at lisamillerassociates.com. That's Lisa Miller at lisamillerassociates.com. You can follow us on the Lisa Miller and Associates social media accounts, including our LinkedIn, our Facebook business page, and X, of course, formerly Twitter. Be sure to hit like and follow on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a future episode, and share this with your colleagues when we get it released on social media. That's it for today's edition of the Florida Insurance Roundup. Thank you for being a very special part of it. And remember, at Lisa Miller and Associates, we've got a passion for public policy and client success. I'm Lisa Miller. Until next time, stay safe, Florida.
This has been Lisa Miller and Associates Florida Insurance Roundup, your podcast on the people, issues, and regulations shaping Florida's insurance market. For more information on today's program, please visit us on the web at www.lisamillerassociates.com.